Paul Douglas back with you on a Friday, Father's Day coming up. Don't forget, don't just send an email. That's so lame. Yeah, at least a card. Joe Lindsley has been braving artillery and bullets and sirens to give us updates from pretty close to the front line of the battles going on right now in Ukraine. Joe Lindsley joining us right now. Welcome back, my friend.
Paul, great to see you. Good evening from Kyiv. For those watching on the live stream, it's a little dark because it's after the curfew hour. Most of the city, the capital city of 3 million people, you keep the lights off. Kyiv it's always was a 24-hour city before the war. And there's a curfew at 8, but really from about, curfew at 11, but really from about 8 p.m., the streets become almost dead silent. And it's quite a jarring, to see a city that was full of so much life before the war. And now it's filled with checkpoints everywhere you go. This is my first time in Kyiv since the war began. And obviously life's a lot better here than it was in the first weeks when everyone thought it might fall to the Russians. But it is very much a different atmosphere.
Joe, why are you in Kyiv? Normally you report out of Lviv. I know you've been moving all around the country, but why in Kyiv? And are there still bombardments? Are you suffering through any missile attacks, or are things quiet for the moment?
There have been no attacks here in Kyiv since I arrived a few days ago, but I left Lviv. It's hard to remember. I think at the end of May to deliver supplies around the country and to be able to report and to see the situation from west to east. And so I think last I spoke with you, we were in Nikopol, which is on the Dnipro River, and across the river we could see the land that the Russians occupy, including the nuclear power plant, the largest in Europe. And then after that, we went further into Donetsk, into the buried territory now where the biggest battle is raging. That battle is in the city of Severodonetsk. We were nearby in a city called Bakhmut, where we were delivering the supplies to the few people remaining there while bombardments continued all around the city, just a few kilometers away. And even as we were driving through that countryside, everything was on edge. At one point, 2 jets flew over our heads, our crew that was driving about 75 feet above us. Later, we saw reports that Russians are flying extremely low to avoid detection by Ukrainian air defense. And at every checkpoint we went to, the Ukrainian soldiers would say to us, looking beyond the road, Godspeed and good luck out there, because it gets more and more dangerous, and really see the difficulty of this. Right now, it's really an artillery fight between Ukrainians and Russians at that point. And unfortunately, the Russians are steadily making gains in these little cities where they focus their resources.
And to that point, Joe, I keep hearing reports. I know you're getting a lot of arms, howitzers from the United States, other arms and ammunition from our NATO allies in Europe. Is there a shortage right now of ammunition?
It can be a difficult thing to figure out. I think there's enough ammunition for the military to keep fighting. The shortage seems to be when it comes to training. And training has been a big problem here. And so the training has been a bit ill-equipped. I was speaking yesterday with 2 British warriors who are here to fight and to train Ukrainians. They were on a sort of a little break here in Kyiv, and they were describing the scene at the front in Donetsk. They said the Ukrainians are not short of courage. That's never been the problem. I think the world sees that. But they're short of understanding. They need tactical guidance and help and better weapons. And there's still one of the main things Ukraine has been calling for is tanks from Germany and from the United States. And that has been the sort of weaponry that even President Macron of France admitted when he was in Kyiv a couple of days ago, or I guess it was yesterday, that NATO has been unwilling to send that level of heavy machinery because they are afraid of further provoking Moscow. And so I heard these stories yesterday from the British warriors of being in the trenches in Donetsk with the Ukrainians. And the foreign fighters told me that the Ukrainians are fully capable of an offensive against the Russians, but they overestimate the Russians right now. They don't, in a sense, believe enough in themselves. Not that they're afraid, and they just need better training and better weapons And he says with that right now, the Russians are not yet learning from their mistakes, according to these guys, and Ukrainians really could make a push, but they need that help.
Well, it's turning into a war of attrition, as many analysts predicted it would. And who's going to, can Ukraine hang in there long term? When I think about the resistance, I think gritty determination. Has the mood of the people and the fighters changed? Uh, Talk a little bit about the ethos and how people are feeling right now.
Well, when I was in Donetsk, we took supplies to sort of a supply depot, a little camp a few miles from the front, and we sat there. The soldiers offered us nice hospitality, and they were speaking quite honestly. While we're surrounded by armored personnel carriers and trucks that were been riddled with bullets while they're delivering guys to the front, and there is a resilience. Part of it, they know they won't give up, so there's a resilience from that. But there's a tiredness and there's a recognition that the idea of the war of attrition. Russia, the largest country in the world with immense resources, that the longer this goes on, Ukraine will be drained of its resources, and the world will lose interest and support. And already we've seen, because of the blockade of Odessa, Ukraine exports before the war so much grain, for example, to the world. 50% of the food for the United Nations World Hunger Program came from Ukraine. But instead of pressuring Russia, world leaders are starting to pressure Ukraine to negotiate because of the food shortage, because of gas prices. And there's many believe, and Ukrainians believe, that Putin or those around him, Putin was always a great chess player, knew this from day one, that you would get to this point where the world would start to pressure Ukraine. And that's why, for example, the surprise visit of Macron was important yesterday, because President Macron of France has been urging Ukraine to give up a little bit, to surrender a little bit, and to negotiate. And yesterday, President Zelensky brought him to the Kyiv suburbs, which have been absolutely devastated. And there's a photograph of Macron, and he looks a bit different, staring at the carnage outside of Kyiv. And so there's a hope maybe that some European leaders will start to wake up. Boris Johnson came here today, and Zelensky has said that he has been one of the biggest supporters of this country. But people are tired, Paul. Yeah, very tired.
I can't begin to imagine how weary you must be. Thank you again for your relentless reporting and upbeat attitude. I don't know. I think I'd be curled up in the fetal position in the corner of a bomb shelter, but I'm amazed. You're out and about. You're exposing yourself to great risk just covering these stories. And Joe Lindsley, we so appreciate you and your team. Mention again for listeners where they can see your reports.
At UkrainianFreedomNews.com, and you can follow us there. And we also welcome support to help us deliver, small batch supplies to get helmets and first aid kits and bulletproof vests to soldiers at the front lines.
Joe Lindsley, hang in there. Be safe, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Good night.
You bet. When we come back, a bit of travel drama if you're flying. Something that Delta is doing right now made me scratch my head. We'll have that when we come back on CCO.